What is the scariest science theory? Story 1. If our universe is in a false vacuum state rather than a true vacuum state, then the decay from the less stable false vacuum to the more stable true vacuum, called false vacuum decay, could have dramatic consequences. Some false vacuum decay scenarios are compatible with survival of structures like galaxies and stars or even biological life, while others involve the full destruction of baryonic matter or even immediate gravitational collapse of the universe. Story 2. Quantum immortality is both wonderful and horrifying in equal measure. It's the very speculative idea that if the quantum mechanics style multiverse is real, every possible event happens. From the point of view of your conscious experience, if there's a chance you live and a chance you die, you will always experience the version of events where you live. That's because you exist in the worlds where you lived, and you don't exist in the worlds where you died. Kind of like how if you decide to walk into the kitchen, you experience the kitchen but not the bathroom, because you're only in one of those places. Schrodinger's cat only experiences the worlds where the poison gas wasn't released. At every given second, there's a chance you die and the chance you live one more second. Quantum immortality suggests you'll always experience the worlds where you live one more second, and that process will go on forever, with your existence continuing through ever more improbable circumstances. This sounds fantastic at first, until you realize that the only guarantee is that you live forever, not that you'll be happy forever. If the bizarre circumstances that keep you going make you miserable, you can never end them by virtue of an immutable fundamental law of the universe. Story 3. If scary means bad things we'll probably live through, then here's a Scientific American article to keep you sleepless. The most productive farmland in the United States is California's Central Valley. According to geologists, the entire valley floods so badly it becomes a temporary lake due to atmospheric conditions that happen roughly every 150 years. The last megaflood was in 1862. The next megaflood would mean nationwide food shortages. California is the only significant U.S. producer of almonds, apricots, dates, figs, kiwi fruit, nectarines, olives, pistachios, prunes, and walnuts. California is also a major producer of strawberries, cheese, lettuce, and cotton. Some of those impacts would cause global shortages, particularly in walnuts, pistachios, and almonds. For instance, more than 4/5 of the world's almond production comes from California. That's likely within our lifetime. And unlike some types of natural disasters that either happen slowly or can be modeled and predicted, this type of Pacific megaflood happens infrequently enough that there's little scientific understanding and basically no mitigation engineering to deal with it. Story 4. The fact that we will never know everything. And one day, the last human will die, and we will still have unanswered questions. It's crazy that the solution to all of humanity's problems could be right around the corner, and we'd never figure it out in our lifetime. Just as the potential to make electricity was available to ever ancient Roman, ancient Egyptian, etc., they never figured it out. Our equivalent could be much more powerful and useful, and we might never know. Imagine people even 100 years in the future thinking, man, those people in the 21st century, how could they not know placing monkeys in a tube with beans and black currant is the secret to interplanetary travel? What idiots! Story 5. Rocco's Basilisk. Basically, it's the concept of an AI designed to protect humans, but so advanced that it can know your every thought. It decides that everyone who did know of it, but did not do anything to help its creation in any way, must be against it, and thus against its purpose of protecting humans, making them criminals to be punished by the AI. And since you now know of the idea, you have to help bring its creation about or be branded a criminal. Story 6. The Dark Forest Theory. Basically, there are alien civilizations out there, but they're hunters like us. So they stay quiet to avoid being annihilated, or they need to take the first shot in order to ensure their own survival. And we have been sending probes and radio bursts into space with the sole intention of alerting other life. Story 7. Couple of space ones. The universe is theorized to exist for about 1 trillion years. That's a very long time. It's only 14 billion right now, so it's basically still in its infancy. The idea is that the reason we haven't found observable life yet is because we are among the very first. We might very well die out before others even exist. Also, a pretty interesting feature of space is that it can be used kind of like a big telescope. There's the possibility that the universe is much smaller than we think, and the vastness is just reflections, like holding up a mirror in front of a mirror. Story 8. Every so often, Earth's magnetic poles will switch. Scientists don't know what causes it and can't reliably predict it. When it happens, there won't be anything we can do about it. It's a big deal because while it's happening, Earth's magnetosphere will be disrupted and will no longer be protected from the sun's radiation, which would likely make it impossible for almost anything to stay alive. Scientists believe we're overdue for one of these flips, and Earth's magnetic poles have been drifting for years. Story 9. A super-resistant strain of life-threatening bacteria or virus, evolving and spreading faster than antibiotics, viral development, is capable of keeping at bay. As someone who has had recurrent MRSA for a while now, this is my personal nightmare. It only comes back every once in a while, but I have given up all hope of ever really getting rid of it. You can only bleach your entire house, take bleach baths, wash all of the things, decolonize the dog, and stick antibiotics up your nose so many times before living with recurrent MRSA just becomes the easier option. I used to think I got rid of it, only to have it pop up 2, 3 months later. The recurrences have been far more minor than the initial infection, but I honestly think that MRSA is what will kill me one day, that it'll be able to really take hold during some future unrelated health crisis. So that's fun. Story 10. Gamma ray bursts. This is the one that gets me. Most space-based disasters, if we had any sort of warning at all. We might be able to do something about them. Send some jerks up to a meteor or something, I don't know. Gamma ray bursts could kill us all at any time, with basically no warning and no possible response. They happen somewhere close enough to possibly affect us once in every 5 million years or so. Obviously not on a timer, but that's the average. Every time one pops off, there's a chance of it completely messing the planet. We're talking massive damage to the ozone layer, near instant death by radiation for everyone on that side of the planet, if they're lucky enough not to die in agony over the course of a few hours, and a slower death for everyone on the other side on a world that's gone completely to crap. Radiation poisoning, starvation, depending on how it happens, and for how long the sky might darken with a chemical smog of nitrogen dioxide gas, blocking out the sun and bringing about an ice age. A horribly irradiated, nightmarish ice age. That's unconfirmed, though, because there's all sorts of ways we'd be completely screwed if one happened. We're talking about extinction-level events here. Chances are low of it happening, but it's still always a possibility, and one that could happen at basically any time. Chances are they wouldn't even tell anyone about it, because one close enough to affect us and pointed our way just results in us all dying. Nothing we could possibly do about it. Game over, man. Game over. So yes, gamma ray bursts terrify the crap out of me. 1 in 10 million or so chances that all life on Earth could just suddenly end. Story 11. Astronomers here. One that I always thought we don't mention often, even though we should, is while the sun is about halfway through its lifetime and has about 5 billion years to go, life on Earth will become impossible much earlier than, and we are in fact nearing the end of habitability of Earth on a relative scale. Why? Well, the sun is steadily getting more luminous over time, which interrupts the cycle that recycles carbon into the atmosphere. Without this, carbon dioxide levels will fall, and all life that relies on carbon dioxide and oxygen will cease to exist, which is all of multicellular life that has ever existed. We have about 600 million years until this kicks in, and 800 million years until the oxygen runs out. This means of all the years multicellular life has been around, we have about a third of them to go. Make 'em count. Story 12. The Great Filter. It's a theory about why the universe seems so filled with potential for life, and yet we haven't found it. It states that somewhere between pre-life and an advanced civilization capable of colonizing the stars, there's a great filter that stops them and ends life. This means humans fit into one of these 3 scenarios. A. We're rare, meaning we've already passed the great filter, unlike other civilizations on other planets. B. We're the first, meaning conditions in the universe are only now life-friendly, and we're among many on our way to the capability of colonization. C. We haven't hit the filter yet, meaning we're screwed. If this one is true, it means finding life or proof of life on Mars or Europa would be awful news because it would almost certainly mean the filter is still ahead of us instead of behind us. Story 13. A technologically mature, post-human civilization would have enormous computing power. Based on this empirical fact, the simulation argument shows that at least one of the following propositions is true. The fraction of human-level civilizations that reach a post-human stage is very close to 0. The fraction of post-human civilizations that are interested in running ancestor simulations is very close to 0. The fraction of all people with our kind of experiences that are living in a simulation is very close to 1. If 1 is true, then we will almost certainly go extinct before reaching post-humanity. If 2 is true, then there must be a strong convergence among the courses of advanced civilizations so that virtually none contain any relatively wealthy individuals who desire to run ancestor simulations and are free to do so. If 3 is true, then we almost certainly live in a simulation. In the dark forest of our current ignorance, it seems sensible to apportion one's credence roughly evenly between 1, 2, and 3. Unless we are now living in a simulation, our descendants will almost certainly never run an ancestor simulation. Story 14. That free will and consciousness are just illusions created by the cerebral cortex. The actual decisions we make are automatic as instinctual as any animals. We just create a story in our minds, giving reasons for our actions after the fact. Our psyches, our wants, our desires, even our emotions are just tools of a designed path of evolution over which we truly have no control. The you think you are is really just watching helplessly while the real you acts. Story 15. That we're it. What would that mean about us? And what would that mean about the universe? I mean, there are billions of galaxies that contain billions of stars which are orbited by billions of planets, and billions of those planets orbit their star in the habitable zone. So far, there is really nothing that we've discovered in the universe, correct me if I'm wrong, that is a one-off or the sole example of something in existence. Life exists in the universe. We are proof of that. So if the trend holds true, there must be life elsewhere. The chances are just too great for it not to. But what if that's not the case? What if we really are the only one? What does that mean about our existence? And by our, I mean everything from the smallest microbe to man to a blue whale. If we are the only ones, then how did we get here? And by what incredibly rare process was our existence brought about? Story 16. That all our observation is limited by our perspective. We can spend all our meaningless existence looking for answers that by definition we cannot understand. I don't want to fall on the topic of religion, but I find fascinating the Lovecraft's vision about the universe. In his fantasy, beings or gods that existed before time itself, and which existence defies space and other natural forces or reactions of the universe. They exist and they cannot care less about us because we are like an ant to them. This made me think about what we can expect from our tremendously limited vision of the universe and concepts like existence and perception. In the end, we are a colony of cells floating forever in an infinite nothingness. Enjoy your plus minus 85 revolts around this exploding mass of gas that we call sun. Story 17. This is a great thread, and I love seeing the discussions, but really, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is that we're such an unlikely outcome of all probabilities just to get to this point. Think about it. We're sitting here, we being basically naked apes with large brains and dexterous hands, manipulating electrons and typing on tools we have made which are globally interconnected. Why? Because we naked apes love to communicate with each other. Really, there's no other reason. At the end of our lives, we will look back and say, yep, that's the way it had to go because it did. No bullcrap, no going back. If there's one thing I believe, it's that there is no way we're meant to fall as a species due to an uncontrollable circumstance. Gamma ray burst? That doesn't make for much of a plotline finisher. We're going to go out by one of Terry Pratchett's horsemen of the apocalypse. War, pestilence, famine, and death. I'll give you death as the outcome of one or more combined of the other three. Personally, I'd put my money on the end of the world being human created rather than a natural event. If you keep on flipping switches, which have a small chance of ending the world, eventually you'll flip the switch, which actually does. We just can't help ourselves. If something can be done, it will be done. It's in our nature, and there's not a damn thing any of us can do about it. To be alive and sentient at all is an infinitesimally small probability. Any observant creator knows the story is what matters, and it's just getting to the good part. Rest in peace, Sir Terry. You are truly missed back here on Round World. Story 18. This is a hypothetical I came up with a while ago. Intelligent life isn't really all that uncommon in our universe. The closest intelligent alien civilization might not be that close to us, but they do exist. They're even well within the distance necessary for us to communicate, albeit over many light years, resulting in a significant delay. But the reason we haven't heard from them is because they're all keeping quiet. They don't want to broadcast out into the void of space, the way we have been doing ever since we invented the radio. Maybe there is something in the void they're trying to hide from. The entire galactic civilization is holding its breath, waiting for danger to pass, and we are the crying baby which gives away our position to the enemy. Story 19. Not a formal theory, but the idea that there are countless intelligent civilizations out there. Look how humans treated other humans of slightly different technological advancement when one desired the resources of the other. Any alien that has the ability to reach Earth would likely have the resources to single-handedly overpower, even out combined global military, kill us all, enslave us, perform testing on us, or just save a few of us as samples and wipe the Earth clean so they can move in. Just look how overpowered an ancient Roman civilization would be by a dozen or so average American citizens, armed with just consumer available technology and weapons. Now, instead of a couple thousand-year technology gap, imagine a 1 million-year technology gap. Story 20, the gray goo theory, or somewhat more likely, strange matter. Gray goo theory is along the lines of, if we manage to create nanotech bots that can self-replicate by changing organic matter into more nanobots, then what's to stop it from slowly turning the entire planet into nanobots? A giant ball of self-replicating robots, just destroying everything organic to make more of themselves. That's scary. But even worse, and I think more likely, is strange matter doing essentially the exact same thing. I'm kind of hangover, but I'll give this a try in explaining. Strange matter is a matter that I believe is negatively charged and gets more stable the larger it gets. Whenever it comes into contact with normal matter, it turns that matter into strange matter and grows. So it's like the gray goo theory, in that everything it comes into contact with is then changed into strange matter and continues the process. The idea that there is a ball of strange matter just flying through space at unreasonably high speed and could just F up everything we know. It's kind of messed up. A lot of okay ways to die in this world. Having my matter altered to a completely different type of matter sounds horrifying. Story 21. This is just a personal theory of mine, but I personally think that if certain aspects of string theory are in fact true, we might end up getting another dimension randomly. Since all of life has evolved with our current dimensional configuration, I think this would be a universal extinction event. As for why we might get that dimension in order for the math of string theory to work, we have our normal dimensions 3 spatial and 1 of time. You also have a number of dimensions above that. However, they are tightly wound up. Think of a telephone wire. From a person's perspective on the ground, the wire is 2-dimensional. From an ant's perspective on the wire, it is fully 3-dimensional. So whenever you move through time or space, you are actually moving through all those dimensions. You just don't notice it. You may ask yourself, why we only have 3 unfolded spatial dimension and 1 of time. This goes back to the Big Bang. We started out as a 1-dimensional point object. Then, as we expanded, the other dimensions unfurled. This continued to happen until additional unfurlings were unlikely. That happened to be around 4. The problem is that additional unfurlings aren't impossible, just extremely unlikely. They could be conceivably so unlikely that they just never end up happening. Or not. I honestly don't know. And since I am an amateur, I will probably never know. I just live with it in the back of my head. Probably doesn't do anything for my anxiety. Story 22. Not a theory, like gravity or evolution, but there's a conjecture about why we haven't run into other intelligent life in our sweep of the known universe. Based on what we know about the conditions required for life as we know it to develop, let alone unimagined non-cellular, non-carbon-based life, for various reasons from science, carbon really is an astoundingly versatile base for complex structures. We would expect to see other intelligent life to exist within our galaxy. That obviously means we're missing some critical detail, some force of nature that we have not accounted for, which can crush intelligent life or prevent it. And that's the question. Is the so-called Great Filter a threshold we have already passed, or a hurdle ET to come that could wipe out our entire species? Story 23, the many worlds theory. That for every possible result, a universe exists somewhere where that result has occurred, which means every non-zero possibility that could happen to you does. In some universe somewhere, you died in a car accident this morning. In some universe somewhere, your family was killed by a small meteor NASA didn't spot and crashed into your house. Every day your family goes to your funeral. Every morning your spouse dies in their sleep. Every night your kid suffocates in bed, or some drunk murders your family. It happens every single day. Every time you say goodbye to someone, in some universe somewhere, it's the last time you see each other. You could leave work today and tell everyone it's been a pleasure working with them, but unfortunately, a bear will escape from a nearby zoo this weekend and eat you, and you won't be working with them. In some universe, that actually happened. Story 24. I forget what the theory is called, but it's something along the lines of this. Every 120,000 years on Earth, the electromagnetic field reverses. The North Pole becomes the South Pole, and vice versa. But all of our technology, phones, cars, lights, run via this electromagnetic field. What's scary is that we are at about 120,000 years since the last flip So at any moment, all the electricity in the world can fail. With that, there would be no way to contact anyone, specifically the police for the crimes to be committed. And at that, they wouldn't have cars because those run on electricity. Story 25. Not so much a theory as it is an event that is probably going to happen in our lifetime. There is a volcano in the Canary Islands that is currently active that has a chance to erupt at any minute. If that thing erupts, it will trigger not a tsunami, but a mega tsunami. That'll head straight for the East Coast. And since no one thinks that this catastrophe will ever happen to us, when it does happen, we're talking about the actual end of the world situation. Millions of people will die when most of the coastal states will be underwater, especially Florida and New York City, which are below sea level. There may be trillions of dollars in damage, and yeah, we're talking about a catastrophic event that'll set us back as Americans hundreds of years. Story 26. You could be a copy of you, right now, in the game. Soma, Mr. Protagonist's face, walks in for an experimental brain scan. He wakes up 100 years in the future. The thing is, the one in the future and the one who originally took the brain scan are two different people, whose lives happen to be the same up until the brain scan. You could, right now, be living a memory before you wake up in your real body. Taking a brain scan for a computer is not like flipping a coin at the moment of the scan. You flipped the coin at the moment of your birth. You don't know how many coins you flipped, or if you won any, or if you flipped at all. Makes me feel like my future is deterministic, and I hate it.